Well, this is supposed to be an express version. So before we give away all of our training secrets,
I'm sorry, I can't
we don't
help
want to
myself.
spoil it all. Just kidding. We're here to spoil it all. Welcome to Don't Tell Me About Yourself, the podcast where old school hiring meets a modern reality check.
I'm Lorna Erickson.
And I'm Victoria Gates, and we're the co-founders of Expert Interviewers.
Between the two of us, we've got 40 years of hiring experience. We've studied interviewing techniques. We've trained thousands of people globally to stop making the same mistakes over and over again.
And we've got 340,000 people following us online because apparently everyone has a story about a bad interview. You know the ones. The illegal questions, the 45-minute monologues, showing up late with no apology.
So every week, we're tackling the biggest subjects in hiring.
We bring real stories, real data, and real talk about how to make interviews actually work for everyone.
Because great hiring isn't luck, it's a practice skill. So whether you hire, apply, or just love a good interview train wreck, the show is for you. We spend a lot of time talking about what's broken in hiring. The ghosting, the illegal questions, the interviewers who give feedback like, oh, I didn't get a good feeling about the candidate. But today, we're doing something different. We're talking about the ones who get it right. The interviewers who are prepared, ask disciplined questions, they respect time, and who make the process feel human. They're rare. They're not unicorns. They're trained.
Today, we're breaking down what makes an interviewer a green flag and how you can become one. So if you have never gotten an interview training or your teams have never been trained, this episode is for you. An express training of our training. So let's get into it.
So why do green flag managers even matter? Only 26% of North American job seekers report having a great candidate experience.
Only a quarter of people who interview have a good experience. That's insane.
That's low. I mean, it's like the bar's low.
Right. And to know that it is heavily weighted on whether they're going to accept the job. And a lot of times we hear, well, it's an employer market. Depending on what industry you're in, what skill level you're at, there are still choices out there.
Right.
And it is still important to operate with that mindset of courting a candidate, just like you would want a candidate to court you as an employer. Like
Right.
it's a two-way street.
And no matter the market, it's always in style to be a green flag interviewer. Always.
Yeah. Because we know from, being recruiters in our past lives that a huge percentage, I think the statistic I saw was like 60% of recruiters also report losing candidates due to poor communication. And it's not always the recruiter's fault. It kind of falls on them because they're like on the front lines. But like if the hiring manager's not getting back to them, they might feel like, well, I don't have an update. So how can I update this person, right? Or it might just get lost in translation. So it's not about just like being nice or being warm or welcoming. Like there are real results and repercussions from being a bad interviewer, right? And being a good one can have the opposite results.
Right. And I think something that companies need to remember is that they might meet hundreds of candidates in a year, but for a candidate, an interviewer and an interviewing experience sticks with them for the rest of their lives. I can think back to interviews that I've had that were great, interviews that I had that were bad, and it sticks out to me. But for hiring managers, it's like a blip, right? It's like there's so many people.
Well, we've shared some of your experiences on this podcast, so they have stuck out.
Yeah, exactly.
And they live forever now.
Yes. But a negative interviewing experience, it's going to impact your offer acceptance rates, your employer brand, candidates withdrawing from the process and probably saying not nice things about you on Glassdoor or Reddit. It's going to impact the referral pipeline that you have. Candidates work with people who have similar experience to them, and they're going to talk about your interviewing. So the candidate experience is not just like some soft metric that's out there.
Right.
It's really important.
Yeah. And the green flags and being a green flag interviewing can fix a lot of these issues.
Yes.
So when we think about like what makes an interviewer like a green flag, and it's one of our most viral videos. I can remember it was actually shortly after an election. And I remember us putting out a green flag video. And I was like, I wonder how this is going to go because like we haven't put out this type of content before. And when I tell you it was one of our most viral videos we've ever had because people were like, the comments were like, wow, like this is possible. Like this happens. And it was like shocking to them. So
I think we were healing people.
Yes, I think we did. We brought them some joy in a time where maybe people were feeling, unstable. And so it's not just like a personality trait of like being nice, right? Green flags are not that. It was like us showcasing the behaviors and making it visible. Hey, this is something you can do and it's repeatable, it's teachable, and it's visible, which is really great. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. And keeping in mind that that viral video, just to explain to people who haven't seen it yet, it was just me looking into a camera, being a green flag interviewer, saying all the things that green flag interviewers should say. And we're going to get into those in a minute of what those are, but it's simple. It just has to be intentional. So we can jump
Absolutely.
into some of them. What's the first one here?
Yeah, well, I think what would maybe surprise people is like being a green flag interviewer starts before you're even in the interview itself. So your
Mhm.
video was like from the POV of like the interview started and how do you set it up and how do you speak to a candidate. But green flag
Yeah.
interview behaviors for me start before you're prepared. You have had conversations about what you're looking for and defining success for that role. So you are clear because clear is kind, as Brene
Yeah.
Brown says. You
Right.
are clear on what you're looking for. You've identified a couple, 3, 4, maybe characteristics that you know you need for the role, and you've translated those into behaviors
Yeah.
that you want those people who have those characteristics, right, to do.
Yes.
So you've done that piece, which is can this person do the job? You've taken care of that piece and
Yeah.
you've gotten clear on that. And then you've also identified would they want to do the job, right? So you've said, hey, what are the motivators? What would make someone be motivated for this role? Spoiler alert, it's not asking them
Right.
what motivates them, right?
Right.
It's identifying that before you head into the interview so that you can listen for those things during the interview. And you've
Yeah.
aligned your team on it too.
If this part of the process isn't done well, the wheels fall off the entire rest of the process
Yeah.
from a candidate experience standpoint, but also from the hiring managers being able to confidently and accurately hire the right person. So when we talk about defining success, hiring managers are pretty used to being like, oh, we need a hard worker. We need somebody who's good at developing people, who's blah, blah, blah. And it's the recruiting teams and the hiring managers, anyone that's involved in that interview process, they all need to sit down and push it a step further and say, okay, it's not just about these basic adjectives. How do top performers act in a challenging work situation? What do they do? Those are your right answers. When we say you have to define success, define your right answers, you're writing down all of those verbs that top performers do in the challenging situations
Mhm.
that come up. And you had mentioned the motivators piece. Um, the top two things we look for in candidates is can they do the job and do they want to do the job? Do they want to do the job is always what is overlooked by hiring managers. They just say, hey, do you want this job? And they're like, yeah, I do. I'm like, cool, moving on. But here's where you take the time to actually define what typically motivates people in this role. So look for contrasts where it's like, is this person going to be working on an Excel spreadsheet in a dark room by themselves most of the day? Are they going to be face to face with clients on a daily basis? Like those are two very different things. Is this person
Yeah.
going to travel 90% of the time? Are they going to never travel? Like find the contrast in the role, and then you can use those to create questions and help the candidate identify if they're actually going to enjoy the role. The other thing I need to highlight that you mentioned was this has to be in alignment with all the interviewers. Like this is a meeting between everyone.
Mhm.
Everyone. Otherwise, you get to the end of the process and nobody agrees. That is a big
Yeah.
pain. We've been there before.
Yeah,
So
for
we
sure.
it's gotta start at this step.
Well, this is supposed to be an express version. So before we give away all of our training secrets,
I'm sorry, I can't
we don't
help
want to
myself.
spoil it all. Just kidding. We're here to spoil it all. But yeah, I mean, in summary, I think this preparation that we're talking about, like it can have real implications. Like not only do you come prepared, you're aligned, you're clear on what it is, but you're reducing bias. If you're
Yeah.
focused on the behaviors and you're clear and everyone's aligned, there is clarity, there is bias reduction, and your decisions are therefore just going to be improved because you're not
Mhm.
letting those things cloud it, which is
Yeah,
great. The
yeah,
next one is like that I think of as one of your favorites.
yeah.
What do we talk about when we say interviews are bad and we say why? It's because it's
Yeah.
not a like,
It's not a mutual fit. Like we need to talk about whether or not this is a mutual fit for both sides. It's gotta be a two-way evaluation. I think that most hiring managers, they sometimes think that they are in they well, they may not think this, but the power dynamics are oftentimes shifted toward the hiring manager, and it's on them to ex to blatantly say, "Hey, this is actually a two-way street. This is a chance for us to figure
yes.
out if we're a mutual fit for each other." So this is our second step here, is making sure to lay that foundation to say that it's a mutual fit for each other. That's why we're here. They're not gonna dominate the conversation. They're gonna leave plenty of time for the candidate to describe their experiences. They're gonna be okay with silence, allowing the candidate to sit and think so that they can bring their best and most relevant examples. And it's not an interrogation. They're really comfortable with letting the candidate share their experiences, and they help them do that, not intimidate them.
Pretty much this is like the opposite of that interviewer episode. But I would say like the biggest thing that stands out for me on this one is green flag interviewers understand that they are being evaluated too. And they want that because you don't want to hire someone who just takes your job to take your job. You don't want to hire someone. We literally just were talking to a potential client and we were talking about quality of hire. And when you hire someone and they turn over very quickly, possibly one of the reasons for that is because they weren't evaluating you. They did not feel comfortable evaluating you. You did not lay the foundation for that. There was not
Right.
that open two-way street evaluation. And when there is, it is going to impact those things extremely positively.
And it gives the candidate some insight into what it's going to look like working there. It's just such a nice, great way to start any relationship. So the next one we have here, and this is, God, these are all so important to me. I'm not going to, I was going to be like, this
Speaking
one's,
of evaluation, like
I love all of these. This one is green flag hiring managers only ask job related questions.
tattoo this on our foreheads along with a few other things I've said during
Yeah,
this
we're just
podcast, like
giving more of a list.
only ask job related questions.
Yeah.
And we talked about the can they do the job and they want to do the job. But we often hear, and it's so innocent sometimes. And we
Mhm.
talk to hiring managers all the time where we're like, I don't think by you saying, so where are you from? Like, what do your parents do? Where did you grow up? Like, I don't think you have bad intentions. I don't think you're out here going, I'm going to ask these illegal questions. But
Right.
those questions do set the stage that you're going to be talking about not job related things. So it's best just to avoid those types of questions. So a green flag interviewer definitely avoids those things.
Yes, they're familiar with protected characteristics and avoid any question or any information the candidate's giving you about those things like the plague. They're just like they're not gonna engage with it. They're not
No.
gonna take any notes on it, and then they move on to things that can actually help them to assess whether or not this person is aligned or not aligned. The other thing that green flag interviewers avoid are hypothetical questions.
Stay out of the woods.
Yeah, stay out of the woods. What would you do if XYZ happened? Stay out of the woods. And the reason why is that we say a would is like a wish. So you're asking somebody, what is the best response to this? What do you wish you would do in this situation?
You're saying, what do you wish you did do? It's fiction. It's a book. It's
Exactly.
not reality.
Yeah. So avoiding hypothetical questions, avoiding leading questions, which I think we'll talk about here in a little bit too. But keeping it job related is going to help you to just maximize your time with candidates.
Yeah. And speaking of maximizing your time with the candidate, you should primarily be focusing on gathering information. This is an information gathering event. This is
Yeah.
not a judging event. You're not to be scoring them in the moment. You shouldn't be really thinking about that. Your number one focus should be getting all the information you need,
Yep.
extracting a full response, being really intentional about your follow up questions,
Yeah.
to get all that information, all that good information, good quality information so that you
Right.
can make a very educated decision, right?
Yeah, hiring managers, I know that candidates have it hard. Don't get me wrong. They're the ones that are like sitting there sweating. But hiring managers, you do have a lot of responsibility where you're having to think about the good question you're asking. And then you're having to decode the candidate's answers to figure out, do you need additional information or did you get all the information you needed for this example? So I'm not saying it's easy, but it
No.
is a practice skill. It's important to understand the follow-up questions that you need to ask. And I know
Yeah.
that this is supposed to be an express training, but I want to give you 3 follow-up questions that we absolutely love.
She can't help herself,
I
folks.
can't
She
I
can't help
can't.
herself.
So these are 3 perfect follow-up questions. You'll never need any more than these 3 follow-up questions when it comes to asking behavioral interview questions. So when you ask a behavioral interview question, it should just putting a candidate in a past tense challenging situation that's work related. The specific follow-up questions that you can ask is, can you walk me through a specific situation? The second one is, what was your specific role in that? Because candidates use we and us a lot, and that's okay. That's just the way we speak, but we just need to understand what their role was because we can't hire their whole team. And then, of course, you mentioned this, this, and this. What happened next? That helps you to leave it open to where you're not leading them. It's like, oh, so you solved that problem, right? Like everything's better now, right? And so instead, what happened next? So those are my 3 favorite follow-up questions. But to Victoria's point there, you have to just take amazing notes. Don't worry about trying to decide if something is right or wrong in that moment. Take good notes because there are amazing AI software now that can do that for you. But if you're a skilled note taker, then that's all you have to do in the moment is ask good questions and take good notes. And that's it.
Right. Just to really focus on gathering the information and gathering quality information.
Yeah.
The other thing I think about, because we were just talking to somebody that was like, "Oh, I know our process is kinda long," or this and that. The other thing a green flag interviewer does is communication of that timeline.
Yeah, there if you did that first step really well of aligning the interviewers, understanding your right answers, coming up with good interview questions and good interview guides, respecting the interview timeline should be fairly easy actually because the hard part is done. So then you can set expectations with the candidate, you can communicate the next steps clearly, and you can follow through with it.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to do that when everyone's on the same page rather than somebody slowing down the process because they're just not sure if they got the right gut feeling. It's a lot easier to maintain that timeline if you do that first step really well.
Yeah. Well, we talked about that statistic we talked about early on with 60% of recruiters losing candidates due to poor communication. Like,
Yeah.
silence ain't working. Ghosting is one of the biggest things we hear about when on social. Like, it's a huge
Yeah.
thing and it's really damaging to your brand, to just your process, to getting good quality candidates. It's why you're
Yeah.
losing people. This
Yeah.
is something that is probably, I would say, one of the number one complaints that we hear from candidates is this
Mhm.
poor communication. Look, we don't advocate for an 8-step interview process. We don't think that's
Mm.
efficient. But
Right.
if you're communicating with candidates that this is what's going on and you're being clear and then you're sticking to that, there's value in that
Right.
regardless, right? So we're not saying you have to have a perfect process in order to communicate it. Just communicating what it has and closing the loop and following through, that is where the value is.
Yep. And so when we ask people about a shockingly good interviewing experience, what are some of the things that we hear?
Yeah. Well, to go back to preparation, one of the things that we hear that people really love is like they actually knew what was on their resume and asked about
Yeah.
specific items. It wasn't like the first time they were hearing about their experience. So the interviewer asked me about this specific project on my resume, whatever, right? That signals like,
Yeah.
hey, this person was prepared. They feel like comfortable. Oh, you know me. Like you're excited to
Right.
be here. We're both excited. It's not just me.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
going to like increase the quality of the conversation from a data standpoint and just depth because they're going to feel more comfortable being put at ease with something like that.
I love that one. And there's such a limited time that candidates and interviewers get to know each other. So when the interviewer walks in already knowing about some of your experience and exactly what they want to hear
Mhm.
about, it's exciting for everyone because you're
Yeah.
maximizing that time. There was another example that came up was the comment here was that an interviewer took plenty of time to describe the company and the position and they explained what success looks like in the first 90 days. And this matters so much because one, it allows the candidate to decide if that's what they want. Like you're
Mhm.
giving them the information to say, hey, this is the primary like goals and challenges that you'll have in the first 90 days. And then it allows the candidate time to decide, is that something that I'm pumped about? And it helps to reduce mishires if you're helping the candidate to align those motivators.
Yeah. Those are both really good examples of how it shows up. We already
Yeah.
kind of hit on the communication piece, so that one kinda goes without saying that that's gonna build trust and increase
Yeah.
offer acceptance and things like that, like communicating and actually following up. But I thought it would be kind of fun to play a game, like a little
Yeah.
ask this, not that. Are you down
Sure.
for that?
Let's do it.
Like flipping some of the most common questions that we hear. So I'll say the bad question, air quotes, right?
Okay.
And then you tell me how we can fix it. I feel like that'll be
Right.
kind of fun. So here we
Yeah.
go. So I'm gonna say tell me about yourself. How do I fix that?
Let's fix it, but let's first describe why our podcast is named what it is.
'Cause it is the worst. Anytime I hear it, I'm just like,
Ugh.
it's it's not even like it's just a bad question. It's just bad. I follow this wonderful communication expert
Yeah.
on TikTok, and she talks all the time about how a bad introductory question sets the tone for the entire conversation.
Yeah.
And when you start it off this way, it's just like I can feel when we have shadowed interviews and we've watched a candidate's
Ugh.
literal body kind of just like shrink when this question gets asked. It just sets it off on a bad foot. It's just it's
It
it's just a
does.
waste of time.
It does, and it's like, I know we're getting sidetracked on the game that we, already decided we were gonna play, but we literally named our podcast after this question of "Don't tell me about yourself," because
Mhm.
we hate this question so much. It's a time waster. It
Yes.
opens up biases for people, like, because where are they gonna start? Like, "Well, I was conceived in the summer of 1983." Like, who knows where people are gonna start? And it's not their fault. Like, you're not giving them any kind of direction. So, let's fix this question.
Yes.
Where I typically like to start is, hey, can you tell me about your current role and what you enjoy most about it? What a nice light way for candidates to talk about something that they're very familiar with. And you are starting to extract some motivators. When you talk
Yeah.
about likes and dislikes, you can then help the candidate decide whether your job aligns with those likes or dislikes or
Mhm.
doesn't align. Just tell me about your current role. What do you enjoy most about it?
Yeah. Love it. All
Yeah.
right, what about this one? Why should we hire you?
Solid barf. Instead, after hearing the details of this role, what aligns with what you're hoping to do and what doesn't?
Mhm.
And by this point, I mean, this should be the very, very, very end of the interview. By
Right.
this point, you've already established that trust, and candidates are going to be likely to open up to you about, hey, this part really aligns. This part I'm unsure about. And
Yep.
it helps to open up that dialogue and continue that mutual fit.
Yeah, this one's definitely asked way too early on in the process, and
Yeah.
the adjustment will inherently put it in the place it should be for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, last one here. Are you a good leader?
Can you imagine someone being like, no? Like, of course they're going to say
Right.
yes.
They're just gonna give you the answer you wanna hear. That's why
Totally.
this question's
Yes.
horrible.
So
Yeah.
this is a good example of a leading question. Instead, you want to put the candidate in a past tense, work related, challenging situation. And instead, that can sound like, can you tell me about a time when someone on your team was underperforming? Leave it at that.
Yep.
Let the candidate walk through a specific background, if they took action or didn't take action, and then whatever the result of that was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, that was
Yep.
fun. Thanks
It
for
was
joining me on
fun.
that
And
journey.
we made it through after our
I
first
know.
soapbox of tell
I
me about
know. So I
yourself.
feel like I wanna kinda, like, sum up, like, how someone becomes a green flag interviewer.
Yeah.
From what I've heard from our conversation today is they're defining success, identifying 3 to 4 characteristics, turning them into actions, right?
Yep.
IDing their motivators, aligning their teams. Then they're
Yes.
taking that and they're using structured guides. So
Yep.
there's alignment there on the guides and they have a good framework in place and they're following that guide. That's
Yeah.
always the challenge, right? It's
And
great to
right.
create one, but if nobody's using it.
They're following that guide, and that
Mhm.
guide is following the candidate throughout the interview process. So that
Right.
avoids repeat questions over and over again. That makes sure that the team is working together as a team and not wasting their time by asking
Mhm.
repeat questions over and over again. So yes, that structured guide is following the candidate throughout the process.
And they separate gathering information from evaluating that information.
Right.
So those are two separate processes. So you're comparing the evidence to the standards that you set during earlier stages in the process,
Yeah.
and you have good notes, whether that be an AI note taker or your own notes, however you prefer. I
Right.
know people that are old school that just really love to
Yeah.
take their own notes, and I
Right.
respect it because it helps you retain it. Whatever you got to do,
Totally.
you're doing
Yeah.
it well at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
And it allows you to be objective this way too. It's like
Yeah.
the notes are there, and then you are comparing their actions with the actions that you already defined as success at the beginning. It's like it's black and white at this point, then there's no
Hmm.
gray area. And that
Yeah.
is so comforting for hiring teams and
Mhm.
managers when they're like, oh, not to mention, if you take great notes, the offer call that you get to make to a candidate is so much fun because you're getting to say, hey, your actions are the exact actions that our top performers take in this role. You're going to be extremely good at that, and we're excited to see you in action. The second thing is your motivators are perfectly aligned with our role. You're going to love this
Yeah.
job. When you can give specific examples like that, it increases your acceptance rate because the candidate's like, I
Mhm.
was well evaluated. Put me in, coach. Let's
Yeah.
roll. Hmm.
And then the last one we talked about was just doing what you say you're going to do, setting a timeline and sticking to it. So you're
Yes.
doing all those things. You're on
Yeah.
your way to Green Flag City, baby.
Green flags, they're not just charismatic, they're prepared, they don't rely on gut feelings, and they're really there to help properly evaluate a candidate and make sure that everyone's a mutual fit.
So green flags are not they're rare. Our whole mission is to make them less rare. That's why we do what we do. And that's because most people just haven't been trained. But intention and having good intentions is a skill and we can build on those skills. So that's what we're here to help you do. Thanks for listening. We will see you next week.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review. It allows us to continue to do what we are doing. Happy interviewing.